Hello, I'm staying here in the forest nearby the top of Mount Konga, one of the most famous mountains of Japan, on May 18 to show you one of most wonderful plants in the world. Yes, this small, insignificant, like greenish white creeping grass like herbaceous plant with small, very insignificant flowers, very much reduced, is, yes, one of the most wonderful plants of the world. And I will explain why. So, first of all, let us introduce plant to you. So, this is Theligonum. Theligonum, and the Japanese name is Yamato-gusa. Very interesting name because Yamato is the old name of whole Japan. So this is a Japanese plant, grows on the slopes of famous mountain Konga. The genus Theligonum has just 3 species, one in Europe, one in China, in Tibet, and one in Japan. Outstanding genus. It was named as the most wonderful European plant. Theligonum sinacrambi grows in Europe, whereas this one is Theligonum japonicum. Why so? This is because of very strange history of taxonomic placements. So first of all, that plant was discovered by Linnaeus and then placed close to so-called Centrosperma. Centrosperma is a group of families which has curved embryo. And at first, they thought this belongs to Chenopodiaceae or Amarantaceae, to the beet family, because beet family also has male and female flowers like yamato-gusa has, like Theligonum has. But then they discovered number of stamens of that plant is not exactly good for Amarantaceae, Chenopodiaceae, and they place it close to Phytalacaceae, another similar plant. Then everything went absolutely wild. They place it in Rosaceae. They place it in Urticaceae nettle family. They place it in a spurge family, Euphorbiaceae. They place it in Latinaceae. They place it in Begoniaceae. They place it almost everywhere in the flowering plant phylogeny tree because of extremely unusual combination of characters. But then, first time in the very beginning of 1940s and again in 1970s, it was discovered that this plant belongs to coffee family. So this is a highly outstanding representative of Rubiaceae, of coffee family. So let me first explain what is unusual. So coffee family must have opposite leaves with intraepithelial stipules and also sympetals, 5 mirrors, pentamerous flowers with 5 calyx lobes, 5 petals, 5 stamens, and double dimorphic gynoecium with inferior ovary. Actually, Theligonum lacks most of these characters. Extremely outstanding. Somebody said that Theligonum represents like a ground plan lichen of Rubiaceae. So it's kind of a big bow plan, ground plan of the family, just make a kind of opening. And from that opening, we see that strange, very strange plant, Theligonum. So Theligonum has opposite leaves, but on the top of the plant, they change to alternate. Very unusual alternate, because one of 2 leaves of the pair is reduced, and instead of leaf, you will see male flower. Leaves which are alternate also have very unusual phyllotaxis. Phyllotaxis is a way of how leaves are located. There are so-called formulas of phyllotaxis, so-called Fibonacci model. So there is a 1 to 2 formula, 1 to 3, and next one is 2 to 5. But Theligonum has 1 to 4. Absolutely outstanding phyllotaxis. Actually, it's interesting that Japanese species, at least, has a very clear indication of that change. You will see that lower part of the plant with opposite leaves is even different in color. So it's like a whitish green, whereas topmost part is a darker green. So it looks like somebody like switched the program and everything changed from that point. It's my observation today. Maybe it's not perfectly correct, but at least it's what I see. Anyway, male flowers, which what I spoke about, have multiple stamens and only two perianth members, so just simple perianth without calyx and corolla, two different parts of it connected together, so you can call it sympetals. And from the middle of this opening of two members of perianth, we will see multiple stamens. Number of stamens vary from 2 to 30. 30 stamens for coffee family. It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, female flowers are not less crazy. Female flowers are typically located lower or sometimes on the same nodes, but also in the axils of leaves. So female flower is always associated with leaf. Female flower has very strange combination of characters as well. It's almost covered with a perianth, like cupulate perianth, from which there will be one pistil going out. Pistil has basal stigma, very unusual one, and only one ovule. So it's kind of only one carpel, at least seemingly, and that pistillate female flower, which almost absolute exception from what we see in the coffee family. So, and many other characters like structure of the seed, structure of the pollen, well, they show it very different characters from what we see in the coffee family. But how it came to the coffee family anyway? The interesting things. So sympetals flower, and actually tendency of coffee family to reduce calyx and leave only corolla pointed people to the idea that probably the flower of Theligonum just lacks calyx completely, and what we see is a corolla. Okay, but how to interpret all other characters, and what we should think about modification of Theligonum? First of all, this idea that Theligonum is rubeaceae was expressed by Stepan Ninikov, Russian scientist who worked in St. Petersburg, Leningrad, and unfortunately died shortly after he defended a dissertation about Theligonum in 1941, in a year of war, and he died in the Leningrad siege 1 year later. So unfortunately his work was almost unknown to the scientific community. Then in 1970s, so Rosalia Wunderlich from Vienna, she stated that that plant is rubeaceae, and she wrote a beautiful, like 60 pages paper when she, like point by point, explained how Theligonum might be taken out of rubeaceae. So she stated that almost no member of rubeaceae has all characters of Theligonum, but each character of Theligonum is present in some rubeaceae. So for example, that unisexual flowers, they present. Reduction of perianth, present. Even number of stamens, at least in one member of rubeaceae, is increased. So this is possible. So this is possible to make all characters of Theligonum separately, so it is possible to make them all together. However, her idea of like Theligonum in rubeaceae, Ninikov's and Wunderlich's idea, was not accepted at first. So many characters was outstanding that some botanists even raised Theligonum to its own family, and then to its own order, Theligonella. So it's a big order for that just one plant with 3 species. But finally, the idea of the closeness to rubeaceae started to be prevalent. First of all, there was a chemical proof that there is nothing in common between Theligonum and Centrosperma, between Chenopodiaceae, Phytolaccaceae, and all other families. Chemistry is very different. Okay, then, like a last strike, went molecular research and developmental research together, with both proved. First of all, developmental research proved that number of stamens, of extrinsic number of stamens, is likely secondary. And it also proved that the pistil of Theligonum has two cameras, but second camera is so much reduced that even Rosalia Wunderlich didn't see that. So this is second camera in the pistil, and this is a proof that the pistil of Theligonum is similar to all other coffee family plants. Remember, even in coffee, in typical fruit of coffee, there are 2 seeds, but Theligonum has 1. You understand the difficulty. And molecular research prove yes, Theligonum is the member of Rubiaceae and it should be placed inside. So that was a great fall because Theligonum was an order and then it fell down into the family Rubiaceae, not far away, for example, from that stinky vine from Pideria. And people start to remember there are chemistry. So Theligonum has that similar order to the Pideria, very insignificant character which proved to be truth. Instead of like all these very big morphological expressions, all these considerations which allowed people to place Theligonum, for example, near to begonia, they should simply smell it and say, well, Theligonum must be close to Pideria probably because of smell. So chemistry sometimes tell you much more than morphology. Okay, so this is many lessons and many interesting things about Theligonum. First of all, why the plant is so outstanding. I think now after claiming the Congo mountain, this is an adaptation to the really very narrow ecological niche. It's a wind-pollinated forest floor plant, very unusual one. So some grasses survive on the forest floor, some sedges, but not much other plants. Some plantains, but this is a very narrow ecological niche, and Theligonum must change itself to adapt to that forest floor condition. So imagine, forest floor has almost no wind. So wind-pollinated plant in the forest floor should change morphology grossly. So that change of morphology is visible. Perianths reduce it, stamens increase it, pollen change it. Everything is reduced to accept pollen in female flower. So these are indication of big change towards the pollination with the wind. Also, interesting conclusion that in a giant explosive radiation like in coffee family, there are always some interesting nooks and corners, morphological one, like leaks in a bulb plant, like people say, that will allow to place very unusual plants. And the lesson for people who just learned the botany is, if you see something unusual, don't call it absolutely outstanding. First, think, maybe there's a member of some very big family, maybe it's some legume or some Rubiaceae plant. And finally, the order. So the chemistry won, morphology failed. This is also interesting. To see morphological reasons to unite Theligonum with Rubiaceae, you should not just observe, but also think a lot. Good example is Rosalia Wunderlich. She did not see that second camera. She interpreted in a different way. And then Rothishauser interpreted as a second camera. So you should not only look on a plant, but also think how these things can be arranged. But sometimes chemistry will tell you the truth immediately. So don't ignore it. Don't eat the plant, but just smell it. That might help you to understand what is it. So this is Theligonum, yamato-gusa. In Japan, one of the most outstanding flowering plant with amazing taxonomic history, which was placed everywhere until it found a home in the family of coffee in Rubiaceae. And today is May 18. Thank you very much.